Welcome back to All Out Politics. News, debate and opinion from the heart of Westminster. Let's turn our attention to Brexit, shall we? Theresa May heading back to Brussels this afternoon following Prime Minister's questions. But with only 37 days to go until the UK is due to leave the European Union, is there anything Mrs May can do to break the deadlock over the Irish backstop in order to get her Brexit plan through Parliament? Well, to discuss that, I'm joined by the Conservative MP and former Vice Chair of the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, Maria Caulfield, and Rupa, Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton. Thanks both for joining us. Ms Caulfield, let's go to you first. We seem to be stuck, and in fact, we seem to have been stuck for quite some time. Can Theresa May break the deadlock and push this on?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And although we seem to have been stuck for a while, you know, as the deadline for Brexit looms nearer, I think it will focus minds, certainly in Brussels, that if they don't compromise and budge on the Irish backstop, then we will be heading for a no-deal Brexit. And, you know, most of us would prefer to leave with a deal. Certainly, it would be in the EU's interest for that to happen. And it would, you know, the backstop is a key issue for a number of MPs who voted against the withdrawal agreement initially, who would then support it if it came back to Parliament.
But when you say break the deadlock on the backstop, how can that happen when we're told that the withdrawal agreement is done and dusted, there is no reopening of it?
Yeah, well, you know, the EU have a history of this, leaving things up to the 11th hour. And it really is, the ball is in their court now, because the Prime Minister is going there with a number of options. She's going there with a Malthouse compromise. She's going there with either asking them for an exit mechanism or a time period to be included in that withdrawal agreement. She's giving them a number of options. The ball is firmly in their court now.
Rupa, do you see everything as hinging on the backstop? I mean, there are others, of course, who would wish to see the entire Brexit process come to a halt. That doesn't appear to be anywhere close to reality at the moment. So is Theresa May stuffed?
Well, she's travelling, hopefully, isn't she? She seems to be doing this shuttle diplomacy back and forth many times, sometimes in the same week, back for PMQs, then off again. I actually put down a written question of how much has all this cost the taxpayer, and it was classified information. We're not allowed to know that. But I mean, I think, well, Maria and I both voted in the same lobby against her withdrawal agreement the first time because it kind of pleases nobody. And she says different things to different people depending on who's listening, depending on who she's talking to. So she says it's either this or no deal or no Brexit. And you can't have it both ways. Something will have to budge, because you're right, we're in this permanent gridlock, deadlock, logjam, cul-de-sac, impasse, whatever you call it. And it's not just the backstop, I'm afraid. So Conservative MPs, it was a big problem for them. But for Labour MPs, there's a whole range of issues, to be honest. And I think the PM's problem in all this is really that we've got a minority government now, and she's got this very majoritarian mindset. And we've got two parties, really, who are divided. But she's sort of, it's a tug of war. So she could have gone down a sort of customs union, strong alignment to the single market route, or she could have obsessed on the backstop, which actually a lot of people think is quite a good mechanism. People like Peter Hain, who was Northern Ireland Secretary at the time of the Good Friday Agreement, it's meant to be a, in case of emergency, smash glass kind of thing. It's a fail-safe. But, I mean, she's obsessing over this. And as far as I understood, the Malthouse compromise has sort of died a death.
Yeah, I was just going to make exactly that point. I mean, from what we hear, but both out of Downing Street and indeed from Brussels, Malthouse seems to have been pushed away. The focus today appears to be on what changes can be made to the legal advice. Now, would that be enough to satisfy colleagues?
We have to see, what the discussions come up with. But I think, you know, as someone who voted leave, who voted against the withdrawal agreement because I was unhappy about it, we have come up with a number of solutions that the Prime Minister can take with her to Brussels. What I'm not hearing from the other side, who voted against the withdrawal agreement, is what solutions they would come up with. What are they asking the Prime Minister to go to Brussels with? So it's very easy to vote against things, to be against the withdrawal agreement, to be against leaving the EU completely. But you know, the reality is, in legal terms, the Withdrawal Act was passed last year. We are leaving on the 29th of March. It is either going to be with an amended version of the Prime Minister's deal, or it will be no deal. I would prefer a deal, so I'm hopeful she'll come back with something I can support. But the other side, you know, although they say they don't want to leave with a deal, that is what is in primary legislation.
I mean, there was a set of 5 demands that Jeremy Corbyn did in a letter the other week, and actually Brussels was very warm to it, and that's slightly embarrassing for the government when they've had 2.5 years to negotiate this. And we're now, people are counting it in hours. So we used to say, this time last week it was 40 days. I think now it's less than 1,000 hours it was at the weekend, so it's probably even less than that. And it just feels that, you know, this has just been a textbook example of how not to do a negotiation. So to trigger Article 50 with no plan, to have a general election in the middle of that, 8 weeks were wasted faffing about, and then she lost her majority. And that's why she got in all this mess. And so she's travelling, hopefully. But, I mean, they've said many, many times, nous allons pas renégocier cet accord. They keep saying that the withdrawal agreement is closed. So, I mean, it feels like, you know, I don't think you have good decision-making when you have a gun held to your head, and it feels like that's what we're being told to do. It's her way or the highway.
I mean, isn't there, to an extent, then, a degree, a large amount of legitimacy in at least finding out what the public thinks again in this? I mean, I'm thinking of the Peter Kyle amendment, that you could see people supporting Theresa May's deal so long as the public got a vote on it immediately afterwards.
Well, you know, certainly when I've been knocking on the doorsteps in my constituency, the last thing people want is another people's vote. It hasn't even come to Parliament because there's not a majority of MPs who would support it in any of the previous amendments. So I just can't see that getting through Parliament. But people, you know, businesses, whether they were for Brexit or against Brexit, the one thing they're crying out for is certainty. A people's vote would drag us out into another 6 months, potentially a year of this Brexit. Most people want us to be talking about schools, about crime, about housing. They are, you know, while it's amazing news in the Westminster bubble, on the doorsteps, people have had enough about Brexit. We need to get it delivered and then get on with running the country.
I mean, Rupa, is this the time to be asking the public to sort out the mess that Parliament made?
I think it is, and I hear very different things on the doorsteps. People that have even changed their holiday money, people that see the chaos with Fly BMI, who explicitly said that they'd gone under because of Brexit. I know some of the motor manufacturers saying, oh, nothing to do with Brexit, but it looks like a bit of a coincidence that, you know, the CBI, the British Chambers of Commerce, the FSB, all these people are really worried about no deal. I think that should be taken off the table because it's doing massive damage to our country. And I think people I speak to, I mean, whenever you sign a contract, you should read the terms and conditions before proceeding. When you buy a house, you have a survey. If the thing turns out to be riddled with cracks, you do not have to proceed. When you delete a file from the computer, it always says, are you sure you want to do this? 2016 was an eternity ago. No one had heard the word backstop. No one mentioned the customs union, the Irish border. Trump wasn't even elected. I think it's only fair when we're better informed to go back to the people, and there'll be a big march on the 23rd. We saw 700,000 people last time, but the 23rd, just before we're due to exit, because I think that is what the public wants, and they deserve a final say on this.
Very briefly, same question to both of you. How confident are you that on the 1st of April we will be outside the European Union?
Well, legally, the Withdrawal Act is passed. Unless there's primary legislation to change that, we will be leaving on the 29th of March.
And I think there's a lot of stuff to be done. I think a delay would be sensible, and we have the transition period anyway, and I don't want to leave at all. I think no form of Brexit makes us better off.
Rupa, Maria Caulfield, thank you both very much for joining us on All Out Politics this morning.